Good evening, everyone. You're listening to the Dynasty Hotseat.
Yes, hello everybody, and through the fire and flames comes to you the Dynasty Hotseat, the only Dynasty show out there that is as certified Inferno, and we are back once again with another way too early rookie mock draft for this excellent 2025 class. Today we've got the one and only Phil. I can't follow him over at Posh Plays FF on Twitter. If you don't know him already, he is the best one from the fantasy wildcard Devi crew. Isn't that right, Phil?
Oh, you better believe it, mate. Max, thanks for having me on. It's a great time of year to put some of these Devi players firmly on the Dynasty players radar, mate. I'm absolutely buzzing to be here. Talk some ball.
Yeah, I can't wait to go through. It's great to chat to the Devi guys about these rookie prospects. So you guys have been watching them for a long time now. So can't wait to get started. Welcome aboard if you are new to the channel. If you could be so kind as to leave a like in the video and hit that subscribe button as well. You know it always helps out. So let's get going, Phil. We're going to go through 2 rounds here. We're going to spend probably more time chatting about the guys in the first round. We might go a quick fire in round number 2, and then we'll obviously talk about everyone's favorite topic, those sleeper picks. But let's start at the top. It is a Superflex mock draft, but that doesn't always mean it has to be a quarterback at 1-1. Phil, have you gone quarterback with a Superflex? Have you got another route?
I have, mate. Listen, my outlook on any Superflex draft is really simple. If there are quarterbacks that are takeable, then that's the way you should go. Ultimately, the way I look at it right now is if you look at the top 50 players for this season's kind of league scoring in all of kind of PPR and Superflex leagues, there are currently 17 quarterbacks. If you can get your hands on 2 of those guys, now at the end of the day, if you're picking up at the 1-1, chances are you haven't got a very secure quarterback situation.
Yeah,
it might. And listen, you might be in the kind of situation where maybe you took JJ McCarthy last year, you sat with somebody injured that can come back, but the likelihood is you could do with another one of those quarterbacks. Like I say, if 17 of them are in the top 50 scorers of all of fantasy, then if you can get your hands on 2 of those, you are set for a long time. So I am going to go quarterback. And I'm going to go with Cam Ward. Cam Ward from Miami, senior quarterback. He is absolutely tearing it up this year, man.
Yeah.
Like I say, he's on 29 touchdowns, over 3,000 passing yards already. The guy is just absolutely carving it up. And I'm going to beat my own chest here, and I'm going to have a little bit of a moment where I'm going to declare that I predicted this breakout in the summer. I did a piece for the Wildcard Show where I dug into some kind of historic data and predicted him as my kind of breakout candidate in that QB class. And he's not let me down at all. His like ascendancy from 0-star recruit, playing at Incarnate Word, all the way through to a Heisman hopeful and front runner this year. Like he's great fun to watch. He'll give you kittens at times with some of the risks he takes. But he's a dynamic, proper gunslinger. Like think of those gunslingers of days gone by. There's a little bit of Brett Favre. He's more athletic, but my God, he'll take any chance. If he sees the ball, he'll extend the play. He'll take the chance. And you're going to have to take the rough with the smooth, probably early doors.
Yeah.
But he's a high-level processor. I've got absolutely no doubt that he's well worth the bet with a 1-1.
What I think is going to be really in his favor as well, if he at least carries over, 50% of the coolness and calmness that he's showing right now, he shouldn't be affected by this like whole new atmosphere, because that's the one thing I see in him more than anything else is just the composure this guy has is incredible, right?
Yeah, there's composure, and it comes with experience, man. He's a 5th-year senior. He's played as a starter every single year wherever he's been. So he did 2 years at Incarnate Word. He transferred to Washington State, had 2 good years there. He ummed and ahed and thought about the NFL draft last year. but got some kind of buzz back that he was probably going to be a late day 2, maybe early day 3 pick. So decided to, in the world of NIL and graduate transfers, the transfer portal, he decided he'd test that final year. And I think, dare I say it, he probably had his pick of schools that were looking for a senior quarterback. And he chose Miami, which raised a few eyebrows at the time. But he has put the U kind of firmly back on the map, to be fair to him. And yeah, I've got no doubt. I think you at 101, you are looking for a difference maker at the quarterback position in a Superflex draft, and he's the guy for me that stands out as the one who could really make a difference.
Yeah, Cam Ward currently sitting in the sort of ranking system and doing based on performances this year. Cam Ward sitting at number 1 overall based on the scoring criteria that I've got as well. So I'm right there with you with Cam Ward as being the first pick off the board. So going on to pick number 2, again, Superflex. Do you stick with the quarterback here, or are the positions too tempting at the moment?
It was close, and I flip-flopped this back and forth. I went over it a couple of times while I was putting my list together. But I'm going to stand pat with my beliefs in terms of the importance of the quarterback position. And for that reason, although there's a very, very likely, worthwhile candidate that I'll discuss at 3 in just a moment, for number 2 right now, I'm going to go with Shedeur Sanders at Colorado. The big winners for me, as a podcast, me and Jack, we kind of we built a bit of a reputation early doors for not being particularly keen on Shedeur Sanders, and it was never a doubt about what his potential upside was. I think coming into the summer and watching where he was going in Devy drafts, we just felt like he was being drafted too high and that we'd not seen all we wanted to see to justify that potential hype. Well, I've got to give the guy credit. Like, he's come out and played this season and has started to answer some of those questions that we had. Like, we asked about, look, he is one of college football's most sacked quarterbacks. And he is guilty at times of holding the ball too long. That's just facts. Like, there's no getting away from that. But it doesn't help that his O-line is about as effective as a rich tea dipped in a brew. They don't do the job. They don't protect him at all. And it's always because he's looking to make something happen. Look, he's got the accuracy and ball placement, elite arm talent, football IQ. If you told me you wanted to make him the 101 because you preferred him to Cam Ward, you thought he was a safer prospect, I wouldn't hate it. I just want to punch for the upside if I've got the 1-1. But at the 102, he's surgical. You can dissect defenses with a great range of passing. I've got no doubt. And I think the biggest thing for me is you hear his dad at the moment making noises about them being selective about where he might go. It gives me the confidence that he's not going to end up in a dumpster fire like Carolina. And that he might be a little bit more picky and a little bit savvy. And what I can guarantee you is if he ends up in New York or Vegas, the bright lights and the big occasion won't be too much for him at all. He'll take to that like water off a duck's back. And I think, he'll hit the ground running. I think he'll be a better pro than a collegiate quarterback.
Yeah, that's something as well. He's used to that circus already, just with what's going on at Colorado and who his dad is. And I think for people who haven't been watching, they might assume because of who his dad is, he's this electric athlete, that this dual threat sort of like destroyer. He's not really, right? He can run, but that's not his go-to at all.
Nah, he's going to pass first every time. I think he offers sneaky upside. If things break down and he needs to get you 7 or 8 yards to reset the chains and kind of, get a fresh set of downs, I think he's capable of it, but it's certainly not his go-to. He's going to look to pick you apart with his arm. Yeah,
it's kind of like CJ Stroud, right? He's got that gear in him if he needs it.
Yeah,
right? You don't exactly really see him use it a lot, right? Yeah, so Shedeur Sanders, I think, an excellent pick at 102. Those are the 2 quarterbacks off the board right away. Hey, if you're listening here, why don't you leave a comment below? Which one of those 2 quarterbacks are you on the team for? Are you team Cam Ward? Are you team Shedeur Sanders? Because we're going to see those flip-flop a lot for sure. So we'll move on to pick 103. Are we going quarterback, Phil? Who knows? Or are we going somewhere else now?
Yeah. We're going somewhere else. There's a clear break now for me in terms of the quarterbacks. I have snuck more into this mock for you, but right now it's time to talk about everyone's favorite G4 running back, because again, this, when we're talking Superflex, those two top picks are purely on upside and positional value. If you want the lights out home run who's not going to let you down, it's this guy at the 103. I can imagine the 103 just absolutely rubbing their hands here and going, "What, you're going to let me have Ashton Jeanty?" Like, listen, he is absolutely explosive. Like, you've done a great job via the kind of X page of like kind of highlighting his work in your college threads, which were a great read for anyone who's not reading them. He's mate, it's an absolute treat to read. But he's just breaking records. He's on pace for an absolutely ridiculous season. 190 carries so far, 1,525 yards, and 20 touchdowns. And that's without anything he's done in the passing game as well, because he offers sneaky upside as a receiving back as well. Listen, he's on a trajectory to break Barry Sanders' collegiate records, which is just incredible, bonkers. Now, what was lobbied at him earlier in the offseason and coming into the season was, but he's doing it at Boise State. He's not doing it on the biggest stage against the biggest teams. And I think we all looked at that going into the season and said, fair criticism. In college, what some of the listeners might know is, or not know rather, is that the teams aren't even necessarily, the teams are responsible for picking their schedules as well. There's conference play, but then outside of conference play, where you play the teams within your division, the schedules are very much put together by your athletic program directors, and they can kind of pick and choose and money making ties, etc., etc. And I think the biggest game of Boise's season this year, in terms of a money spinner, was against Oregon, week 2, early in the collegiate season. Big, number 1 team in all of college football at the moment in terms of the rankings are Oregon, and are still undefeated. But Ashton Jeanty really put them to the sword and gave them some worries. His kind of fluid movement and change of direction, his vision, contact balance, he just generates missed tackles. He's emerged as a true star. And with the 103, if the top 2 people in your Superflex leagues go QB, I tell you what, even if you don't have the 103, if QBs go 1 and 2, right, you are all of a sudden, you're trading a future first and whatever first you've got this year to move up and take him. Particularly, it's a deep running back class, but he stands out as an absolute star.
Yeah, he really, really does. And even looking at this last week, whenever Michigan took on Oregon, you seen these top tier like Donovan Edwards or Khalil Mullins, who probably won't be available this year, but is a really good prospect as well, do nothing really against that Oregon defense. And then look what Ashton Jeanty was able to do in comparison. It kind of shows you there are definite levels to the game. And Phil, there's something strange though, and maybe it's just because we are doing this way, way, way too early. But I remember when Bijan Robinson was coming out, and it was like the second coming of, Barry Sanders. Why? Am I missing something, or does there seem to be a little less hype about Ashton Jeanty than there was about Bijan Robinson? Do you think it's just because it's been this 1 year only and people haven't caught up to it? But for me, Jeanty's doing stuff that we never seen Bijan even do.
Yeah, listen, I think the biggest thing was how highly recruited Bijan was, and the fact that he spent his entire collegiate career at Texas, one of the powerhouses of college football, whereas Ashton Jeanty decided to go the Boise route and play in the FCS, and you can kind of somewhat be out of sight, out of mind, and not under the national media spotlight. And the reason he's under that spotlight now is because his performances have driven him to that level.
Yeah, absolutely. He's just been tearing up the phrase I love. I heard Pat McAfee say this. I don't know if it's a phrase everyone uses, but he calls it the Smurf turf over at Boise. I think that's fantastic. Right? That's so good. Yeah, that's brilliant. So you realize
you've got a load of people who aren't going to know what reference you're making there.
Oh, yeah. Google some highlights of him. You'll see he's running all over some Smurf turf. You'll know what I mean. So, Ashton Jeanty in at the 103. Now, at 104, we've had some quarterbacks come off the board. We've had a running back come off the board. What about some of these wide receivers? We're going to see some of them soon.
It is wide receiver time. Receiver time. And I, again, since I published a way too early mock for Kings a couple of weeks ago, have flip-flopped my receivers around as well.
Yeah.
Mainly out of safety and wanting to make sure if I'm spending a top 4 pick, I want to know that they're playing receiver, which will give you a clue as to where we're going later. But yeah, with the 104, I'm taking Tet MacMillan. You know, I keep putting it on the on the Wildcard Devy X feed. Like, there are not any wide receivers, elite college receivers, doing more with less from their quarterback in college football. Noah Fifita and Tetero MacMillan are high school teammates, which is one of the reasons I think they've carried that bond through. But Tet MacMillan isn't playing with a future NFL cast. He's not playing with a quarterback that's going to get drafted. Yet has still already put up over 1,000 yards this season on 63 receptions. 6 TDs. He had a bit of a drought, but kind of bounced back this last week with 2 scores. The guy, Jack and I did a program in the offseason where we talked about like what we thought needed to happen from NFL prospects this year to help Devy prospects, and this incoming class in particular really raise their stock. And one of the things, Max, was we said that we needed to see Drake London step up. Now, I know you're going to hate this, but it's time for you to admit from where he was, he's starting to step up. And
absolutely, yeah.
And Tet MacMillan, listen, they're not a like-for-like comp, but there are similarities in the frame, the size, how they can box players out. And listen, Drake London went number 8 overall in the NFL draft. I see absolutely no reason that Tet MacMillan is not a top 10 pick. There are some really key defensive standouts on the side, on the other side of the ball this year in terms of your NFL draft that might knock some of these offensive prospects down. But Tet MacMillan will likely be the first or second receiver to hear his name called, and he's going to make a team happy for a really long time. What I love more than anything about him, though, is in spite of that ridiculous wingspan and huge frame, is he gets open. He gets open with short area quickness and like really nippy route running that you wouldn't expect of a bigger guy. That's what sets him apart from your Drake Londons and other kind of big prototypical X receivers. Like, yeah, he's got a rare blend of like kind of fluid movement that just allows him to take up positions and get that yard of space. And then once he uses that wingspan, you're not taking that ball off him.
No. Yeah, he's one of those athletic freak guys, and it's one that whenever he goes to the combine and people see the measurables as well, then people are going to get really, really excited. It's one that you might, if you look at some of the box scores, you might think, oh, he's gone missing that game. What happened that game? And then you watch some of the plays, you're like, it looks like he's got a team of paparazzi around him because it's just him. Like they're just covering him. They know he's that big weapon. So yeah, he for me is still my wide receiver 1 in this class for sure. I just think the upside there is tremendous. So there's one other big name, and there's another couple of guys catching up after some big performances this year as well. But Tet for me still the outlier at the number 1 wide receiver rank, and he goes at 104. Phil, who's going right after at 105?
Yeah, so 105. Listen, I kind of alluded to it earlier. This guy could be the most talented player in the NFL draft. And the big question is simply whether or not he's going to play wide receiver. But right now, I'm going to take it's my way too early mock draft. I'm going to assume that he does get drafted to play wide receiver, and I'm going to take Travis Hunter, wide receiver at Colorado. Listen, he is probably, like I said already, the best player in the entire NFL draft this year. For those who don't know him, I don't know where they've been, but he is an elite two-way prospect, like the likes of which we've not seen since Prime, since Champ Bailey, Charles Woodson. But even all of those great names eventually settled on one side of the ball. And, the worry, The worry in drafting Travis Hunter and the real element of risk is if he gets drafted by a team and they decide that he's going to settle on the defensive side of the ball. You could have just whiffed the top 5 pick away. But, there is the distinct possibility that he plays wide receiver. I wrote about it in the summer. Look, facts are facts. I'm not saying for a moment the young man is motivated by money, but if you look at elite wide receiver prospects, they earn a handful more than your top cornerback prospects. If he has a choice to make and he's getting, people are talking about him being a top 5 pick, regardless of which position he plays. So, if it may well be that eventually finances become a factor and he decides he wants to be a wide receiver. And if that's the case, you're getting an absolute gem. You're getting a guy with elite ball skills, run after the catch ability to extend plays, really, really good route running. The reason I can't take him any higher is that uncertainty about where he's going to play. Even if he starts as a two-way player, it's going to limit his snaps on offense and then subsequently his target share from a fantasy perspective, which hurts his overall kind of headlines and figures. But the talent shines through, and he's certainly worth the gamble.
Yeah, I just think in general, you're right. It is that flashier position to go for. And it kind of brings you more headlines. It gets more eyes on you. Like, it gets more money in your pocket. And I don't know if it is for him, but I bet it's more fun to play, right? I bet he has a better time out there catching touchdowns than
absolutely
blocking, right?
Surely running forwards has got to be better than running backwards all day.
Has to be, right? Yeah. So I think he'll come out as a wide receiver, and he's it's going to be real. I think he'll end up playing both sides of the ball. But the majority, I think, will be spent at the wide receiver position, and they might sneak him in some defensive place as well, while trying to catch the other team out. So I think he's a very worthy pick at 1-5. And moving on to pick number 6 of the first round, Phil, where are you going?
Yeah, listen, I figure if you've got the 106, your team's half decent. You've just missed the playoffs. Yeah. Maybe you had a bit of bad luck with injury, and like I already said, it is so important to have that quarterback position in place. And even if I've got 2, I'm looking for 3. If I've got an elite third quarterback, or a potentially elite third quarterback, I can look to trade an existing vet that I've got on my roster. I could look to trade one of my starters, maybe the guy that regularly sits in my Superflex position, and gamble on the upside of this pick. And it is a gamble, but the traits are outstanding. And for me, that's Jalen Milroe at Alabama. He is by far and away the dual threat quarterback to watch in this class. Explosive runner, strong arm, and he's an absolute chess piece in the red zone. If he ends up at a team that wants to utilize the RPO, he's dangerous. He's a numbers changer because he gives you problems. They've got to spy him, and that leaves other things open. In the red zone, he makes a real difference. The issue is, and Jack and I spoke about it recently, the developmental curve that will be needed and the distinct lack thereof, it seems, at the moment in the NFL. And, you've only got to look at the absolute roller coaster that has been the Anthony Richardson experience. You've only got to look at the fact that Justin Fields can't get a job or keep a job. There is a distinct gamble with this pick, but he has all the physical tools needed to become an absolute premier playmaker at the quarterback position. What he sometimes lacks in refinement and accuracy, he makes up for in that athleticism. Best, like I say, when he sets up the vertical passing game. He's got a big arm, and he can set that up with the RPO game. And teams have got to think about his running all the time. And we've already seen, listen, I'm not saying he's going to be Jaden Daniels, but and physically they're very, very different. Yeah. Jaden Daniels has certainly got a little bit more up there than Jalen Milroe's shown. But where they hurt you is the same, right? Just, Jaden Daniels is averaging 60-something rushing yards a game, which gives you a great floor for fantasy, right? But he sets all that up from that downfield passing game that McLaurin is absolutely feasting from at the moment.
Yeah.
And I could see a potential for a similar pathway for Jalen Milroe. Yeah, it's tantalizing. The upside is really nice here at the 106, but there is that kind of air of caution. But I kind of feel like at the 106 you can take that risk, swing for the upside, because you're not a bad team. Like I say, you've likely only just missed the playoffs, and if this kid hits, you're sitting on a potential gold mine.
I think it was 3 weeks ago. I'd put out in one of my threads like he has to be the quarterback one in this class. Just the way he was playing then, he was beating teams on his own. He's obviously gone a bit of a dip since then, not performing to those same high standards that he was. But for a couple of weeks there, it was just he beat teams just single handedly, and anything he did was just amazing. You think if he can get on that kind of hot streak and someone can coach him to keep consistent with that, then you're looking at a really, really like special prospect here. The one thing, Phil, and you'll know more than me, he's definitely going to declare, you think, this year? Or is there any chance he stays at Alabama for another year?
I think, given the listen, I've said this repeatedly. I don't think it is a down quarterback class. I don't think it's a bad year for a quarterback if your NFL team needs one. And I think the market will dictate the fact that some of these guys decide to come now rather than wait. And I think Jalen Milroe is one who stands to benefit from that.
Yeah, I think you're right. It'd be a good time for him to go out and test the water, and getting him at 106 could be a potential player to push you further into those playoffs for sure. But if you had the 107, slightly better season. So who you going for the person at 107?
Yeah, this is a name that has been buzzing in Devy circles since he stepped foot on campus, really, and that's Luther Burden. True junior, wide receiver. Getting him at the 107 feels just beautiful. It feels like stealing, to be completely honest with you. 5-star recruit. The entire Mizzou kind of passing game has worked through him since he was a freshman. He had an outstanding year last year, putting up over 1,000 yards. This year has been a slight statistical regression, mainly down to generally just the entire offense there at Mizzou not playing as well this year as they had previously. And his QB, Brady Cook, is a large part to do with that. He had a big time year last year. He's not quite been able to hit the same heights. Listen, he still managed to clock up 40 receptions. He's had a couple of niggles with injuries and illness. And he's put up just shy of 500 yards, 4 touchdowns. What's really important to me is people comp him to Debo. Debo's the comp you'll hear, because he's one of these guys, if you just get the ball in his hand any which way, whether it sweeps, reverses, whether it's in the short passing game and dump offs, like whether it's out wide, like he is a big play threat from anywhere on the field. Just get the ball in his hands and watch what he does. Like the open field elusiveness, shiftiness, the yard after catch threat is just it's a treat to watch. It is an absolute treat. His instincts and feel for the position and for finding space and making things happen is kind of unmatched. Like, and it's been a while since someone has done that as well as he does. If your league, listen, I've kind of written it in my notes here. If you play in a league that allows big play bonuses, so if you get extra points and bonus points for receptions over 30 yards, 40 yards, 50 yards, Burden's your guy, because he can literally take a little dump off and do wonders with it. Again, if your league allows points for return yards, he's a dynamic returner as well, particularly punt returner. At the 107, it feels like stealing.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he's. Yeah, if you thought of this time last year, he seemed like a guy that was destined to be like 102. Some people had him at 101 even this time last year for for this class. So I think, yeah, you're right. Brady Cook, I think he's playing a little bit hurt. He seems to take time off the field an awful lot. Something not quite right there at the Mizzou offensive line. Maybe not as good as it was as well. So something's not quite right there. So yeah, take advantage of this downturn in value for Luther Burden and snap him up at 107. I think that is a great deal for a player that, especially if he gets that right landing spot and he can be a feature in an offense, and he's going to really, really put up some big numbers even in his rookie year, I think. So he's great value at 108. So let's go on from Luther Burden to our next pick at 107. Let's go on at 108 now, though, Phil, shall we?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're now into the realms of your playoff teams and the rich getting richer. Because there are there's a couple of back-to-back running backs with these picks. And I've taken a my guy at 108, and that's Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State. Yeah. Listen, at 108, this guy's had it all. Like he wasn't a high recruit, but he has been incredibly productive from the day that he stepped on field. And Jack and I have warned kind of people in the past that sometimes rushing numbers aren't all they're cracked up to be because of the competition and the schedule, but he's done it in the SEC, the toughest division in football. He did it for 2 years at Ole Miss as a 3-star freshman. He kind of broke his way into the team and then just never let the job go. He broke records for SEC freshman rushing yards and touchdown totals. He, then backed it up. Last year was an interesting year for him at Ole Miss because all of a sudden people knew how good he was, and he had to adapt to being the first read that defenses looked to take away.
Yeah,
and he still put up good numbers. Maybe not quite as high in terms of the kind of rushing categories as his freshman season, but it still was impressive. And this year, I think he surprised everybody when he decided he was going to test the transfer portal and ended up at Ohio State, because there is another elite running back at Ohio State. And all of a sudden it was like, right, well, what are they going to do here? Are they harming each other's draft stock? Are they taking each other out of the equation? But all it seems to have done for Judkins is the resting periods have just helped him look all the more explosive. It saves some tread on the tires. And yeah, listen, in terms of his skill set, like he's going to make an NFL team really, really happy, like early doors, because he's ready to play. He's a versatile back. He can play gap and zone, so it doesn't matter particularly where he ends up in terms of landing spot. Really difficult to bring down on first contact. He breaks arm tackles, absorbs contact, and just plows ahead. He's not really known for his passing chops, but I don't think that's something you can knock him for. It's just something he's not really being asked to do, rather than seeing something that he can't do. And listen, I think a running back needy NFL team could take him in the first. And if they do, the draft capital to get him at 109 means he's likely to be a high-end starter for years to come.
Yeah, he's someone that whenever he transferred over, I sort of predicted he's going to be the guy that will. It's not going to be him that's going to be hurt by this in terms of his dynasty value. It will actually be the other guy. And is the other guy at 109? And you said it's back-to-back running backs. Are they back-to-back in Ohio State? Are they back-to-back in the draft? Is it Trevion Henderson right after him?
It's not. No, I'm gonna dip and take Amarian Hampton from North Carolina. So it's really interesting how Quinshon Judkins made himself a move that saved tread on the tires. Like if I told you this year that Quinshon Judkins been able to be spelled by a very good passing attack at Ohio State, obviously as well, and Trevion Henderson in the running game, Quinshon Judkins has 95 carries this year. Okay, if I was to tell you that Amarian Hampton basically is North Carolina's offense. And going into this weekend, regardless, again, not talking about snaps that he sees the field as a passing down, pass plays. We're talking purely his rushing carries. He's already on 213 rushing carries this season.
Wow.
Like, he is their offense. He is an absolute bulldozer. He is aggressive. he's a bad man, Mags. He's a bad
Yeah.
man. Like you can see him looking for contact as he goes through the line. He hits the hole at top speed, and man, he loves contact. He's so physical. Yeah, look, it's difficult this season because my concern is the way Carolina are using him, that by the time he gets through the pre-draft process, that he's knackered. Like,
Yeah.
that he's just beat up and done in. But at the moment, like, whenever you think, my God, are they going to give him a break today? They don't. But
Yeah.
equally, he then puts up production. Like, their quarterback play since Drake May moved on has been absolutely non-existent. And the best way I can put it is like, he's going to be the guy. Like, everyone knows he's going to get the ball. He's going to get those carries. Like, but they can't stop him. Like, they're just not stopping him. He's a north-south runner, incredibly tough to bring down. Won't make you miss with wiggle, but he's like a bowling ball. He's like a bowling ball. Smashes through pins and incredibly difficult to stop once he gets going. He's got some decent passing work.
Yeah.
It's hard again. Like, when you look at college backs, teams tend to play with a style, and it's hard not to look at him and see another former Tar Heels running back in Javonte Williams, like pre-injury. People remember Javonte Williams now and talk about him having lost a step, but before he suffered that horrible ACL injury, he was a really, really dynamic rusher, and Hampton could be the same and more.
Yeah, if only Hampton had like a Michael Carter in the backfield to help him maybe take some carries away, right? Like he did. Yeah, that is the only real thing with Hampton as you went through it? Is there like a fear that he ends up like a guy like Najee Harris who come into the league like a battered veteran already, right?
But if you're right, but if you play on the idea that you're playing 2 to 3 year windows in Dynasty, you don't need him for any longer than that. I live by the rule of wherever I can, I'm going to get rid of a running back before they get paid their second contract regardless and re-roll the dice. So why not get him for his best years and then move him?
Yeah, absolutely love it. Yeah, I think Hampton's a real beast. He's going to do it a couple, well, it could be a number of NFL teams, but he'll find himself a role for sure. And at 1.9, great value there. Moving to the back end of the first round, we're at 110. Then who's following up Omari and Hampton at 110?
Yeah, so I'm gonna break the mold here, and I'm gonna take a tight end. Listen, I think whether you play in a tight end premium league or not, this guy is worthy of a late first round pick, and that's Colston Loveland at Michigan.
Yeah.
Listen, he was the first read in the passing offense in Michigan's team last season when they won the national championship, playing in a side that had Roman Wilson as another target. It had Blake Corum, and Donovan Edwards, who were both pass catching backs, but he was still the first read in that passing offense. He's a mismatch from the tight end position with his alignment, versatility, and his route running. Great acceleration for a big guy. Creates plays after the catch, which is hugely valuable, particularly if you play a tight end premium. He uses his frame well in the red zone, which makes him a great kind of touchdown weapon. The fact that Michigan are so run heavy probably means we're only scratching the surface as well of what he could be.
Yeah. I think so.
And in the right scheme at the next level, he could be absolutely unleashed.
He looks like this new breed of tight end coming in that's killing off this rookie tight ends don't produce. Like we've seen the last 2 seasons, rookie tight ends leading the league in terms of fantasy points, and Loveland seems to be the next guy up in terms of these guys. He can come in, he can produce right away for your team, which is definitely worthy of spending a first round pick on, right?
Exactly. And I just kind of look at it like at the 110, you've got a good team. You're not many pieces away from being a legit contender. Well, you're already a contender, and this could be the guy that if he hits could put you over the top and land that championship.
Easily. Yeah, easily. Just a piece you can plug in a tight end and not worry about who's going to go there week in, week out. It's such a valuable thing to have, rather than it could be that you missed out the championship because you're streaming tight ends or you got one of those guys outside of that top 7, 8 this is someone that could really give yourself a championship push and get you into that final, like the poor team maybe at 111 who maybe lost in the championship final, Phil. But who could you give them to bolster their chances for next year?
Yeah, so listen, what people will tell you time and time again, and they're not lying to you, is it is a deep running back class. And I think because of the depth at this point in the draft, people are more likely to take a receiver knowing that it gets a little bit thinner there, and that they can always kind of drop back into the second and still pick up a running back. So I'm going to go with Isaiah Bond, who I think is a fringe. I think he's a fringe first round NFL draft talent, and also a fringe first round kind of talent for your dynasty drafts as well. He is a speed merchant. That's where he wins. That's what he's about. He's a field stretcher, elite top speed. I mean, there's already talk that Xavier Worthy's combine record might be under threat. He like first round receivers come in all shapes and sizes. You've got Luther Burden, who is a kind of Debo comp. You've got Tet, who is, your Drake London prototypical X style kind of guy. This is your diminutively statured, explosive, vertical threat who can accelerate and create separation between himself and defenders. He's elusive after the catch. He can make defenders miss, cut on a dime. He's such a difficult one-on-one tackle. Like if a defender breaks down his technique and sets him up, he's going to make you miss. But then that's not to say that's all he can do. He is a good route runner. He's not just going to run nines all day and fades. He can run across the middle. And make tough catches as well. Well, like we've seen him do it this year at Texas. Not everything is a go ball. In breaking cuts, he's going to create that separation that way as well. So, yeah, like good player. Scheme matters. He needs to go somewhere that has got an established kind of X. But he's not exclusively a slot guy either, just because he's a little bit smaller. He can be. Dare I say it, he's got better straight line speed, but he can have that Zay Flowers role.
Yeah. Where he can kind of be all over the field, right? He seems like that kind of like, you don't want to call someone a gadget guy because that's got obviously bad connotation to it. But he's like he is an all rounder more than he might appear to be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and definitely a good player to add to your team. Someone that, again, if he hits, kind of like this is where Xavier Worthy was going last year. I kind of think the potential is just there for kind of a breakout if it happens. Obviously, still there for Xavier Worthy if he can keep his feet in bounds. But that's another story for another day. So let's move on to 112 then. Back end of the first round. Who goes here for you, Phil?
Yeah, and again, this was a real toss-up between a receiver and a running back. But again, given that depth at the running back position, I've decided to go for the receiver. And I've gone to Ohio State again, and I'm going for Mr. Smooth himself, Emeka Egbuka. He's kind of become the forgotten guy. Like, in fact, I think he was like the 106 or 107 in my way too early mock draft that we did last October for last year's class. Then injuries kind of set him back. He decided to come back to school and play his senior season. And it's really worked to his advantage because he's showing everybody again just how silky smooth, well polished, an elite, a high floor prospect as you can get. He plays the kind of move piece role in Ohio State's offense. So he doesn't line up exclusively on the outside. He does kind of move around the formation. And he could do the same at the NFL level. He's just as comfortable doing the work to move the chains as he is getting open further down the field on those kind of intermediate and deep routes. He's a technician, silky smooth, jack of all trades. Look, you're getting a guy again who is going to give you a high floor year in, year out. Maybe not the kind of ultimately high ceiling, but I can see him living in that kind of wide receiver 20, like kind of 18 to 20 range year in, year out, like for the foreseeable future quite easily. And at the 112, if you're adding that to a championship caliber lineup, like you're winning. It's how the rich stay rich.
Yeah, he's the kind of guy that you'd love to go in somewhere that has like that established exit. Somewhere like imagine like the Falcons would be like if they stay with Kirk Cousins next year. Like him doing the Darnell Mooney rule is such an uptick for him, right?
Exactly that, right? Because credit to Darnell Mooney on his kind of resurgence, but ultimately you're definitely making an upgrade there in terms of talent, and that's the perfect type of landing spot for him.
Yeah, he would. Yeah, no, to see his numbers be phenomenal. So great value, especially if you want a championship. You get another championship caliber player into your team. So Phil, what we'll do now, we'll transition into the second round and the sleeper kind of picks. Phil, just like last time you're on the show, why don't you give me sort of 3 names from your second round? So like 201, 202, 203, and we'll focus in on one of those guys to chat about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so 201. This guy missed my original mock that I wrote for King's Fantasy Sports, but I can't ignore him anymore. Caleb Johnson, running back from Iowa. 202, Evan Stewart, wide receiver at Oregon. And then 203, Travion Henderson. Probably takes a bit of a tumble, but with good reason, I think. Nothing that he's done wrong, just more how well everyone else is doing. So Travion Henderson, running back from Ohio State at 203.
Well, you've not said your piece in on Caleb Johnson. Was it KJ Superman over on? He's doing so well this year. I know his Twitter handle. That shows you how good a season he's having, right?
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Listen, I don't think right now in this deep class of running backs that everyone's talking about, that outside of Ashton Jeanty, there is a running back consistently playing better than Caleb Johnson is. Yeah. And I think he's the guy right now who is driving up draft boards in NFL circles and dynasty circles. Thrives in zone running schemes. So if you think teams like the Niners or the Bears, the Browns, listen, I hate comping good players and recommending good players for the Browns, but if Nick Chubb doesn't quite get back to where he was, he would be the perfect Cleveland Brown in their scheme.
Yeah.
Decisive runner. He's got pass catching upside. He presses really well vertically, so he stays patient behind the line and does a great job of pressing vertically before deciding whether or not he's going to stay on his track or attack the backside of the run. He's a clever player, a really good back. He is Iowa's offense. Put my teeth in. Iowa's offense at the moment, and yeah, again, he just deserves his flowers because I've ignored him. I ignored him on our breakdown of the top running backs in the class a few weeks ago that Jack and I did. I didn't include him in my first way too early mock draft. I've got to include him now because his play warrants it and deserves it.
He's playing so well. One of the traits he has that you'll see in almost every elite running back is if you come at him with an arm tackle or you come at him with anything other than 100%, he's going to blow right past you. Like he's just so hard to bring down, he makes him so much fun. Seems like a locker room guy as well. I did a little research of him. Obviously, he's been in my weekly list a few times. Seems like there's a couple of photos of him like with sort of like clown glasses on and like silly. Seems like a fun locker room guy. And I like to root for those guys. But I don't know. Do you like to do that as well? Where you're like, I'm gonna pick this guy because I like him.
I can root for him until he ends up in Cleveland. Like that. That's the deal. I will root for him, wherever he goes, as long as it's not Cleveland. Yeah.
Yeah, he seems a fun guy. So he's the focus there for picks 1, 2, and 3. So let's roll through 204, 205, and 206 then, Phil. Who have you got in those positions?
So 204 is Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback at LSU.
Yep.
205, a quarterback who's heading in the opposite direction, is really starting to kind of stack down these boards from where we might have seen in preseason. That's Carson Beck at Georgia. And then 206, sticking with another tight end, another difference maker at the position, Tyler Warren at Penn State.
Let's go. I'm sure people have heard enough about Carson Beck from the Tyler Warren's not got any love from what I've seen online so far. So why don't we chat a little about Tyler Warren and that really impressive Penn State team?
Yeah. So Tyler Warren, listen, Penn State don't have any wide receivers worth even discussing or bringing up
Yeah.
and mentioning. Tyler Warren plays from the tight end position, but does a bit of everything in that offense. You'll see him
Yeah.
on sweeps and reverses. You'll see him throw touchdowns. Um, he's thrown more than one this season already.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, though, is he's had 51 receptions. 51 receptions as a tight
51.
end, 600 plus yards already in a predominantly rushing attack. Yeah, look, he's a big guy. Great red zone target. He to me, like, we've spoken about Colston Loveland already. If you just cast your mind back a couple of years, like when everybody was talking about Dalton Kincaid, and then all of a sudden Sam Laporta got the draft capital
Mm-hmm.
and burst onto the
Yeah.
scene, and everyone was like, "Well, how did we miss this guy?" Like, I get the feeling there's the very real prospect that Loveland and Warren go the same way.
Mm.
So yeah, Tyler Warren is definitely an ascending name. He's a lot of people's tight end one. I don't think I can quite get there, but he's certainly one to keep an eye on, particularly as the close of the season plays out. If Penn State make the college football playoffs, that'll get more eyes on him.
Yeah.
So yeah, one to keep an eye on.
Definitely want to keep an eye. I find Penn State hard to watch this year. There's like because I know Singleton's there as well, but just the way they play and the way they run that offense and like I don't know. I don't really enjoy watching Penn State play, Phil.
No,
Right?
like so this weekend just gone. I was looking at the slate of college games and I was like, do you know what? I'm gonna watch me Ohio State and Penn State.
Yeah.
So Miami were playing on at the same time. Cam Ward's throwing 5 touchdowns. Xavier Restrepo's catching 3 of them. It's lights out. It's an absolute barn burner. And I was
Yeah.
watching Penn State and Ohio State, and it was miserable.
Yeah.
But for Penn State, it works. It's incredibly effective, and they're having a good season. And Tyler Warren's a major part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can't fault it if it is working for them. So yeah, Tyler Warren definitely one to look out for. So Phil, that's up to pick 6, is it? So let's go 7, 8, and 9 in the second round. Who are those 3 guys?
So 207, I have gone with, I won't call him the surprise of the SEC this year, but I don't think anybody quite predicted the breakout he's having, and that's Trey Harris, wide receiver at Ole Miss. 208, I've gone for the previously mentioned Xavier Restrepo at Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And at 209, I have gone for the ultimate my guy in this class. I love him, and I guarantee there'll be an awful lot of people watching tonight who will never have heard of Harold Fannin Jr., tight end from the Bowling Green Falcons.
Go on. You can't not talk about him. He's your guy, right? Let's go ahead. I don't even know, Phil, if he's. Let me pull up my spreadsheet here. I don't even think he's mate. I've got Terry and Stewart for Bowling Green. I've got Harold Fannin. Is it Harold?
Harold Fannin Jr.
He's on. I had him listed as a wide receiver, though. Is that kind of the way he plays?
That tells you everything you need to know. So he has that tight end eligibility. That's what he's listed as. 73 receptions this season for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's one of those guys, like when you watch him, you know how everyone gets really gooey when they see a wide receiver make a one-handed catch. Like he's doing it from the tight end position. Like he is an absolute treat to watch, and he falls in line with a lot of college quarterbacks at the moment that are these kind of wide receiver tight end hybrids. He is quick, he is strong, he's got great pass catching chops, and he makes the kind of sublime look normal. Really good route runner, big play threat, yards after catch. I love him, and I kind of feel like I'm giving my biggest draft secret away at the moment, because you could well get to draft season and people never have heard of him. But they should. And listen, Max, I'll do this like because I'm here. Like anybody watching him, Anybody watching this can have him on me and thank me later.
Nice. Yeah, so you heard it here first. Harold fan. I've got to spell F-L-L-I-N, right? Fan in, like you're fanning yourself. He's so good, you have to fan yourself, right?
That's
the kind
right.
of
Perfect for the hot
exactly.
seat, right?
Absolutely perfect. So Harold Fannin Jr. there. Look out for that name. And we got 3 more names at the back end of the second round, Phil. Who are they?
Yep. So at 210, I've gone with Nicholas Singleton, Penn State running
Yep.
back. Interesting to see your guest last week had him in the first round. I can't get there. Trevor Etienne at 211, running back at Georgia. And then finally, to round out the second round, wide receiver Elik Ayamanor, wide receiver from Stanford.
Yeah, so I think we've talked about ETN and Singleton already, but Iomanor, yeah, I know him from last season where he had that incredible game last season where he tore apart Michigan. There was a big team that he completely destroyed almost by himself. He's having a good year this year as well, though, right?
Yeah, it was Colorado that he absolutely tore up.
Was it?
And he basically he gave Travis Hunter the one bad game Travis Hunter's put on tape as a corner. He put up over 200 yards on him. It was a monstrous display, and that's what he's capable of. He's playing in a poor Stanford side this year, and he's still had nearly 50 receptions, nearly 600 yards, and 5 touchdowns. What's interesting is they're using him a lot closer to the line of scrimmage this year. He's tall, he's slim, he's Look, I like him. I took him with the very last pick of a sixth round Devy draft pick this summer, knowing that he's likely to get top 100 NFL draft capital. And if you're patient enough to know that you don't need him to burst on the scene straight away, I think you've got the makings of a very, very good receiver that will outperform his draft stock.
Yeah, he has that ability as well. I think it always helps when you see that from a player, like, oh, there's something special there, and it's like if you get to the right place at the right time, and someone can tap that ability out of you, that's wheels up for Eric Iomanor for sure. And he is the last pick of the second round, but we're not going to end it just there, Phil. We've got a little bit of time left to talk about some deep sleepers, and I've got a few names before we get into the real deep. So I've got a few names that have been sort of rising up my board. So I'll give you 2 of them. The first one, man, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it just looks really nice, but I'm convinced this quarterback might have the nicest looking ball, maybe the best deep ball in college football. How good is Dylan Gabriel, or am I just falling for it?
Oh, man, I can't get there, mate. I can't get there. I think he is propped up by his supporting cast. I think he is good. I think he is an excellent college quarterback. He is a leader, and he runs that offense that he's expected to run. He runs it incredibly well. I'll give him that. Have a look at his passing chart. He has a real issue with passing to his right. It's uncanny, like how much more comfortable he is throwing to the left-hand side of his alignment. And it's one of the reasons why early in the season Tez Johnson seemed to thrive, whereas Evan Stewart, we were asking questions about where he was. Look, I think he's incredibly good in the system, but I think the system supports him more than his potential to be effective at the next level. Think Stetson Bennett, right? Stetson Bennett, back-to-back national champion winner at Georgia. He's nothing more than an extra body at the Rams. I don't even know if he's still there. I'm not saying he couldn't be more. I'm not saying that there's no chance, but he's certainly not where I'm putting my draft capital, anything more than a late round dart throw that he lands somewhere where he might have a sniff of an opportunity.
I'm looking at his measurables here, and I'm not sure if it's true. He seems like a small guy. I don't know. Maybe that's how big his offensive line is, though. Maybe he just looks like a smaller guy behind them. But yeah, that's one thing I thought. Well, I'm not sure about, but it's it's just how nice that deep ball looks. I think it just gets, I got mesmerized by it a little bit, Phil. But he's someone I've got on my radar for sure. And another one you mentioned earlier, man, I really like me some Xavier Restrepo.
Xavier Restrepo, did I skip him out? He was in my cluster from 207 to 209.
Oh, was he in there? Sorry. Well,
Yeah.
let's chat a bit about him then as well, because he's
absolutely.
a guy that he just looks like a guy that can come in and win and be plugged into an offense, and kind of like if Josh Downs was used properly, right?
Yeah, man. Like, so he's going to make a quarterback really, really happy. Because what you're getting, like, I said to somebody the other day, and I can't remember whose post I was replying to, but I said he is the kind of perfect Bill Belichick era wide receiver for the New England Patriots. Think Danny Amendola, think Julian Edelman, like that gritty slot receiver with short area quickness and sticky hands. Like, he has been such a security blanket for Cam Ward this year. But I say that like Cam Ward's the one that's got him to where it is. I think they're elevating each other. I think Restrepo helps Ward just as much as Ward helps Restrepo. And if that precise short area quickness, savvy route running, if Lad McConkey was what rocked your socks last year, Xavier Restrepo can be that guy this year.
Shout out Ali Cook. Look out, he's gonna be Ali's guy then this year. Right? He's Lad McConkey's #1 fan, right? So look out for Xavier Restrepo, Ali, for sure. And then let's get the deep sleepers then, shall we? Let's get some guys. Let's see if you can give me a guy I've not got on my big spreadsheet of players. Let's take that as a challenge. Let's see if we can get any. I've got how many do I have on here? I've got 281 at the minute, Phil. So I wonder if you can get a sleeper that's not even on there.
Right, let's go for it. Okay, challenge accepted. Well, I think two of them straight away. I put three down. Three guys who I think are going to be. One's an ascending player who's broken onto the scene big time this year, but wasn't been talked about before this year. That's Ty Felton, wide receiver at Maryland. There is a day 3 running back. I think he's likely to get day 3 NFL draft capital, who I think will massively outplay that draft capital. That's Kyle Menenge at Rutgers. And then finally, I think my best shot of finding one that's not cracked your list is a senior wide receiver at San Jose State, Nick Nash.
Oh, I've got nothing on Nick Nash. I don't think I've watched San Jose State play once. Right, go on then. Nick Nash. What? It sounds a bit like a crisp. Tell me about it. Tell me about him.
Well, in true Nick Nash style, he is nice and spicy. Senior wide receiver, tall, slim, 6'3", 193 pounds. He is a threat in both the short and long passing games. He's a possession monster. He's got 80 receptions so far this season, and he's 5 yards short of 1,000 on the season. Nice. 12 touchdowns. Listen, Jack, like I said before, Jack and I sometimes warn people about running back production because running backs can beat up on lesser talent and really kind of take over games. I think you can look at wide receiver production with a little bit more of an optimistic glaze. And he put up 728 yards last year as a junior with 8 touchdowns. And like I say, he's just shy of 1,000 already this year. He's productive. He offers kind of, like I say, versatility in terms of how he plays. He's a good possession guy. And I think he's one who will massively outperform any draft stock that he gets.
You heard it here first. Nick Nash, automatically my favorite player now with that name. That is absolutely fantastic. And Phil, with that high note of Nick Nash, that brings us to the end of the show, unfortunately. Just wanted to say thank you once again for coming on and chatting us through this 2025 class. Can you just remind everyone listening, where can they find all of your great work online, mate?
Yeah, man. So you can find me on X at PoshPlayersFF. I do a lot of this stuff now for the X account for the Fantasy Wildcard Devi team. Working hard to make sure that if you play Devi, or even if you don't, you can get to see clips of those names that you might have heard, particularly on Saturdays. We're really busy trying to make sure you can see clips of the guys that you've drafted. Maybe you've drafted them based on reputation or things you've read but haven't had the opportunity to get your eyes on. We want to help you get your eyes on those players. And then doing a little bit of writing for King's Fantasy Sports as well, giving me an outlet just to get back to putting down whatever runs through my mind on any given day, and gives me a channel to kind of let that out there. So yeah, cheers for having me, Mags. It's always a pleasure, mate.
Pleasure was all mine. You make sure you go out and follow and all that stuff, especially that wildcards Devi Twitter account is fantastic. You're right. You get all the video clips of all your best players on there. So it's a must follow up there. And thank you as well to everyone watching. If you made it this far and you've not already hit a like and a subscribe button, make sure you're doing that as well. And that brings us to the very end of the show. Just remember, everybody, for anything Dynasty you need to know, you want to keep it locked right here on the Certified Inferno. See you next time.